Metrobus drivers have gone on strike today. It's expected that this will have affected about 30,000 commuters. For more on this story, let's cross to my colleague Maageketla Mohlabe, who's been watching proceedings. Thank you very much for joining us, Maageketla. Are you still at Gandhi Square, and what's the latest?
No, Nompu, very good day to you. We left Gandhi Square just after 12 p.m. and that's simply because there was a briefer meeting, media briefing rather expected to take place here at the SABC house in downtown Johannesburg. That's where Demawusa as well as SABC actually gave that over an hour media briefing and detailing those demands and saying that should Metrobus management fail to, meet their demands, this particular strike will still continue throughout the week. And you would probably recall that those demands include the 18% salary increase as well as the COVID-19 allowances. They want about 15,000 rand to be paid to each employee or driver. And also this is for drivers who worked between level 5 as well as level 2 of the lockdown. But those who didn't work, they actually want them to be paid about 8,000 rand each. But with me is Stephen Faulkner. Thanks so much for your time, sir. You are the General Secretary for SABC. Demawusa, sorry. Just talk to us, what you mentioned here during this press briefing is that and I'm going to quote what you said: Metrobus is not running as it should be. And you also said it's an entity that is shocking at resolving the grievances of the workers. They are saying that those demands are not reasonable at all.
Well, they're saying two things. They're saying that our demands are not reasonable. Well, we expect nothing less from the employer. That's a normal response from any employer, whether they're in the public or private sector, that the demands of workers are always considered unreasonable. But the wage demand in particular may seem to be high. But when you think about the way in which pay levels have been undermined by inflation and now are being, in the public sector, are now being completely prevented from advancing at all, then you can see that over the years the value of the salary of the workers has been terribly diminished. So that's our opening figure. That figure encapsulates the losses that have been incurred by the workers over the last 4 to 5 years. And if you wanted to return to levels of salaries that were around 5 years ago, then that's what you would have to do in terms of the cost of living and all the rest of it. But all of these matters are negotiable. Of course they are. Yeah.
It's not the first time we're here witnessing this particular strike by Demawusa workers. Why is it always the same union, though? And I'm asking this because Metrobus say that your members only make about 1.4% of the entire 900 employees that work for Metrobus. And here you are holding Metrobus at ransom.
Well, whether we're holding them to ransom or not is a disputed point. I don't know where this 1% plus came from. But then again, this has come from the same people who can't explain where 47 million rands went to refurbish the bus service. So I would have thought their statistical and arithmetic capacity left a lot to be desired, actually. So we'll just leave that there. Nobody understands the figures that they're talking about. We know who our members are. They pay their subscriptions. We have them on file. So I think that's nonsense. But let me just pick up on another point which I failed to mention. I failed to respond to earlier. When we say that we have so many demands, that should indicate to any sensible person that if you're putting demands on the table which are 4 or 5 years old, there is something shockingly wrong in the management of the entity that allows those grievances, those difficulties, those those conflicts to continue over that length of time. So it's not a matter of Demawusa being more militant than anything, or being troublemakers, or holding the council to ransom. We've been held to ransom by unresolved disputes for years. So there's a degree of frustration amongst the workers. When are we going to get our shifts allowance sorted out? When are we going to get the pay scale sorted out? When are we going to stop people being brought into Metrobus and being paid on levels which people who've been there for 4 or 5 years are not receiving? Why is there no explanation why some people are disciplined and dismissed and others committing similar offences are taken back without a hearing, for example? So there's anarchy already inside Metrobus, and we want to regulate that anarchy. We want that anarchy to be resolved so that we can have a proper, constructive industrial relations framework.
A lot of them want to go back to work, and of course these are not your members as Demawusa. They want to go back to work. Are you threatening them?
No, we're not. There's been absolutely no evidence of either verbal or physical violence. And in our pre-strike briefings, we made it absolutely clear to our members that we are not in favour of using violence to resolve industrial disputes. And that was completely agreed. What we are finding, which is very interesting compared to what you've just said, is that we are receiving phone calls now from members of other unions saying that we wish our union was also fighting for these demands because they are unresolved for us also, despite the fact that management issues statements saying that they've got a very close and comfortable relationship with 1 or 2 of the other unions in Metrobus. We can only assume that's because they're selling out their members.
Should we see buses there at Gandhi Square? As we're speaking right now, it's empty. Obviously people are frustrated. We're going to go down there in a few minutes. Should we see buses there? Will everyone be safe, including the commuters?
Will everybody
be safe?
Be safe? Oh, of course. Nobody wants. I think you've got to understand that bus drivers have a particular relationship with the communities they serve. After a week or a month or a year or 5 years, people know their bus driver, and bus drivers know their passengers. Do you think they're going to put them in a situation where they're in danger at all, or in any way endanger them? No, they're not. They're part of those communities. They live in those communities. Bus drivers are not millionaires that live in Santon. They live in those areas. They live in the community. They're part of those communities. That's why many of them are bus drivers, because they want to serve their community.
No, I just want that clarity, because I listened to you here saying that do not expect any buses to run on Johannesburg's roads anytime during this particular strike, and that tells me that obviously you're going to stop them from working, isn't it? Isn't what you're saying?
No, there's no threat, no physical or violent threat at all in what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is a large core of bus workers who are not prepared to work. If the city wants to use propaganda that there's going to be violence to withdraw the other union members, not our members, but other union members from driving their buses, that's their decision. That's their decision. We will not act violently if those buses come back on the road. But we will be using all manner of persuasion, as unionists we must do, to persuade those workers to join our strike.
Just lastly, what are you saying to the commuters that are stranded now? They use their last money to buy those tickets, those monthly tickets. You're probably going to be driving home from here. They don't have cars. They depend on these buses to go to work.
No, it's a terrible thing. And I mean, it's not as if Metrobus, the management of Metrobus, was not alerted to the strike. They were well in advance of it taking place. And yet they allowed commuters to continue to spend their rare amounts of resources on future tickets and so on and so forth. Well, they're just going to have to be fully reimbursed, our passengers. And if I was the Metrobus, I would compensate passengers as well by giving them a free ticket for the inconvenience that's been caused by the terrible management of industrial relations inside Metrobus. It's not the fault of workers to raise issues of concern. It's their constitutional right in our democracy to raise their concerns. It's the duty of those service providers to make sure that we have a good service for our people. So that's where we are just now, yeah.
Thanks so much for your time. That is the General Secretary for Demawusa saying that there won't be any violence at all. The buses may go out of those depots. Over 400 of them, we saw them this morning parked, not functional, or rather not operating. And he's saying that they may as well go in the routes. There won't be any distractions. And confirming also saying that they will definitely not use any threatening tactics towards any other employees who are not affiliated to Demawusa. What we hear is that it's just only 1.4% of those that are striking, but of course he is actually disputing that, saying that he's not quite sure where that percentage comes from. And from what we heard early this morning from Metrobus spokesperson, he said that they are losing over 300,000 on a daily basis. Today, they have lost that money because of this strike. So they are actually saying that they are not going to be able to meet all these demands that are being put on the table by Demawusa. But it's a story that's developing. They are saying that they will keep protesting or striking until these demands are met.
So Maageketla, just for clarity, so we can expect a continuation of the strike even tomorrow and for the rest of the week? Okay, thank you very much for that, my colleague there, Maageketla Mohlabe.